Welcome to the New York Information Security Meetup slash the Cyber Guild. I have the great pleasure to introduce Brian Haugli today, who's co-founder and CEO of SideChannel Security, right?
Yep.
And, it's funny, not always I get a chance to interview people who have their own podcasts and their own shows, and I think this is going to be an interesting one. So why don't we kind of jump right in while people are joining us, and feel free to ask questions while we're having this conversation in the chat session here. So what I'd like to do is kind of cover a various topics here. So whatever we can cover, and the idea is to have like a natural conversation flow. So why don't we get started as, Brian, like you have a very prolific, business and, kind of startup life. You've created your own company, but you were a CISO in the past, working for an enterprise. So maybe you can walk us through your career path and how you got to where you are today. That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So you guys can see me and hear me okay? I'm just kind of making sure my studio is good. Okay. So yeah, hey, thanks for having me. I actually know one of the people in attendance, Jason Starr. So good to see you, Jason. Yeah, my background's, pretty, I don't know. I think it's interesting, but some people do. I don't know. Maybe I don't feel it's interesting, but some people do. So yeah, I started out young as a hacker and kind of, amateur, non-professionally working and doing things. And I got my start out of that after high school, worked for a number of years, and then then went down to DC, and I was in DC for about 10 years. I worked at a number of different DoD agencies and intelligence agencies, doing security work, enterprise architecture, all IT, all security work. And then my capstone role really there was I led a program for the Pentagon, overseeing their entire cybersecurity for them in the National Capital Region. I left that in 2015 to become the first vice president and CISO at a Fortune 500 insurance firm here in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. And during the last 2 years there, I had started a side project called SideChannel to begin supporting and figuring out ways to start helping small, mid-sized businesses really start addressing cybersecurity. One of the things was like when I was a CISO for Hanover, the insurance company here in Boston, I never had anybody like me on the other end of the phone when I was talking to my vendors. Like it didn't exist. Like there's no one there. And I started realizing, me and my business partners then started realizing, these folks are too small to get this type of expertise because we're too costly. Like it's $250,000 a year easy for me to walk in the door and work for you full time. Like that's base, right? Most companies can't afford that. But all companies still require some level of CISO advisory and oversight and guidance. And that was the genesis for what we were doing. And in fact, our first client was a nonprofit, still is a client of ours. They started the concept of foster care in the United States, and it was called the New York Foundling. And we started the company because of them, because they needed this type of support. And we kind of had an altruistic kind of calling to do this. But then from there, it just kind of grew. And in 2019, beginning of 2019, April, I stepped away. I took the company full time, and we've been running very successfully ever since. So that's kind of where it landed me to where I am now. And my focus is primarily no longer on the enterprise, but on, small mid-market companies. Although the enterprises still keep coming back every once in a while, asking for advisory and guidance. So I don't shy away from it, but I'm not out really trying to help those folks, because they should have a CISO, right? They should have somebody like me already there. There's not much more I should be able to do unless you're just kind of a junior CISO and you're kind of this your first role and kind of getting up into the roles. And we find some traction in that space, but yeah, so that's it.
That's awesome. So what type of services do you provide currently to SMBs, and what's your definition for SMBs? Is that size-wise, or just the fact that they might not have the resources to employ somebody full-time?
Yeah, it's not so much size, because I've got clients that are 2-person VC-backed startups, and I've got couple of my largest clients are multinational multi-billion-dollar companies, some public, some private. And they're all kind of in the mid-market. They're not necessarily, those larger ones at 2 billion are not considered enterprise. I've figured out, based on just kind of talking with folks, that around 1.2, 1.3 billion, you should really start seeing the need for having your own CISO, right? Although that's still on the lower side. So that's why we're still seeing some of these $2 billion companies in revenue still using fractional services. So what we're providing, what we've done is, first, SideChannel only has CISOs. That's all we employ. We view everyone else as just doing security consulting. So if you say you're a vCISO, great. Have you actually ever done this role is my second question. Because this is not an easy role. And this is not a role that you can just kind of like get your CISSP and then suddenly you can say, hey, I'm a CISO or I'm a vCISO. We differentiate ourselves, and what we're providing is the fact that we've all been actually in that seat at an enterprise. We've actually done this role. And that's important because you need to know the nuances of what actually goes into being a CISO, the politics that you've got to be able to like navigate, how to be able to sway, influence. So our services are much like a law office. We've established a retainer-based model, and we provide those services to really anybody who wants to take advantage of them. So we've set up kind of bands, 8, 12, 26 hours a month. And then, underneath that, if you need some level of project management or other guidance or experience or capabilities, we can kind of fill that in with our team. But you're always going to have a CISO at the top working with you. That is your account manager, your practitioner, your delivery. Everything is coming out of that. We got a 15-person bench, and we just, we actually kind of pick and choose clients too, because we don't want to go in and put our name against somebody who just wants a checkbox. Because we don't want to be the CISO who's like, oh, you didn't really follow through on everything. Again, we're not trying to be consultants. We're trying to be much more like your outside counsel. We want to sit on your side of the table, have dialogues with you, be able to articulate your security posture to anybody, regulator, board, customer, partner, vendor, whomever. And we want to be there for the long term. So it's kind of the structure. That's what we're doing. But we go in, build out a program. We do an assessment. We have a SaaS-based platform now that we can, get people into. They can do assessment, a guided assessment, and out of that, then start working with a CISO on, let's figure out what those gaps are. Let's start addressing them. Let's build roadmaps. Let's execute, follow that roadmap. Let's shepherd that roadmap. Let's remind you every 2 weeks to stay on track with the roadmap, which is always a fun one with clients. And like 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, we want to go do this. And you're like, remember 2 weeks ago, we all agreed we were going to go do these things for your security posture over the next 18 months. Why did you have this wild idea? So there's a lot of that. But again, that's the role of the CISO in an enterprise. Like, you wouldn't believe what an effective one is, always navigating and doing that anyway. It's constantly keeping people, let's remember what we all agreed to. Let's stick to it. And then changing when it's necessary, not just when there's a kind of a new shiny object in front of you.
So I would love to touch upon the SaaS platform you're currently building. But before we jump into that, is there a network effect of having, kind of that pool of CISOs that you interact with on a regular basis? And then did you establish, and it sounds like you kind of did, a best practice in terms of what a vCISO should do or should not do?
Yeah, we have done that. We have probably pulled together a substantial network. So anybody in the security field kind of knows, if you're in it, you've got a really great community around you because again, remember, like, security came out of IT came out of telecom. And every time there was that transition to the next one, everyone kind of had to band together, being on the fringe, to kind of prop each other up and support each other. So the network that is within the security, the InfoSec community, is phenomenal. So we definitely leverage that. Our bench, not only are we, all established folks who can do this work, but also have a network of people to be able to then pull from. And that's actually who's usually wanting to join us to be a CISO. That's who we're usually kind of talking to and finding out a little bit more from if they want to do it. So that's the network piece. Did I kind of answer what you're looking for there?
Yeah. But what I'm looking for is really whether there is, do you all get together at one point and share ideas, or, share, just in terms of like those folks that you currently, employ,
Yep.
and then maybe you develop a best practice, and then maybe you can jump into like what, when a new VCSO comes in, what are the first thing they do in the first 60 to 90 days? And at one point in time, does a company actually call you? Is that they call you after an incident, or they call you proactively before anything happened?
Yeah. So I mean, we're very much a team. I mean, like we've established SideChannel to basically be a franchise model. So we have people coming in, we kind of position people regionally as well as via verticals. But I mean, we have team meetings, every week we're on a call on Fridays, we get together. Everyone gets to kind of share wins and losses, ask for help from the other group. Because it's one thing I really like, and I think everyone else really likes being part of it, is it's kind of SideChannel is a bit of a team sport. Like you get, if you don't have the answer, somebody else inside of our company or inside of our group does. And then, we can collectively solve a problem. Or you could even bring somebody in on a consulting on one of our clients, and then they go away. So that way now the client gets access to this one person all the time, but now they get the brain share from like everybody on the team as needed without having to pay for it on a full-time basis, which is great. From like an execution standpoint, no, we're not there just when you have an incident. We are like ingrained into your, your ongoing meetings. We know your leadership. We've interviewed and talked to ideally the CEO, the CFO. Sometimes we're even, we've got clients that are bringing us into their board meetings. And again, we are embodying that role of the CISO. We're just fractionally there for you. We're not there as a full-time employee. So you're not maybe having us part of your, if the CIO is the one who brings us in, you don't have us as part of your, your leadership team and doing your employee engagements and all that kind of, I don't want to say frill, but like that excess kind of work that you look at as executive leader to kind of round out the role in a company. We're there just to focus on security, just to focus on risk management and execute on that and that alone. We're not doing, employee development with staff, right? Because, we're outsourced. So we're bringing in other outsourced partners to do those things. The execution is, we've got our playbooks of how do we do things? How do we go into a client? How do we engage? What are we looking for? Our assessment methodology is very much set, right? It's built on NIST cybersecurity framework because that's the world I came out of and that's what I really know. And it's one benefit of having your own company. You kind of get to dictate how you want things done. So that's nice. But it also, I mean, come on, honestly, NIST CSF works. We're not in Europe. So, I don't see our clients aren't like seeking ISO, which, I haven't had one client who's like, nah, we want to go with ISO. They're just trying to figure out, what do I do? What am I supposed to be doing? What's the best practices? I've got customers that are asking me to articulate my posture. I have no idea what to say or not say. So that's where we're coming in. But very, very rarely, well, I'll say this. We don't come in when there's an incident because we're not being like, we're usually there already and we're able to help clients manage through incidents. We have gained new clients what I call post breach, which is post breach. The janitors have come in, cleaned up all your technical issues, hopefully gotten you through whatever. And now you're sitting there going, I do not want to go through that again. What do I need to build now? What do I need to ensure that I don't go through that? Or if I do, it doesn't hurt as bad. And again, that's what you want a security leader to be able to create and craft for your organization, which is give me a program that I can point to that it's not compliance, checks all the boxes, but am I doing all the right things that I'm supposed to be doing? A lot of times in the small and mid-sized business, you've got a very dedicated, a very capable IT leader, director, or CIO, but they don't have the security savvy. They just don't understand what's required there. That's where we're coming in, filling in that component. And you know what? They shouldn't need to. Like, you shouldn't be a jack of all trades and expect to be perfect at everything. It's like, be good at what you're good at. Ask for help where you know you're not good. There's nothing wrong with that. That seems to be a model now more and more people are embracing.
So, and it sounds great. Obviously you're filling a gap of companies not able to hire certain talent. As you mentioned, it's really expensive. Have you come across any challenges in terms of, again, it's like the difference between having a outsourced counselor or somebody who's full time. Are any particular challenges that are VCs have faced because they're not entrenched or not fully employees of the companies? And one thing I would think about, like on top of my head, maybe if something happens, then it's easier to throw you out on the bus because you're an outsourced function.
Yeah, I don't know about being thrown under the bus yet, but it is difficult when you are not part of that leadership team to be able to hear and understand the leadership discussions that are going on, to be able to better understand what the risk management posture is or tolerance is for the organization, which way they're going. So that just requires a real level of commitment to staying connected with your point of contact, being integrated into their team meetings, into what's going on, as much as possible, and just constantly being that advisor that's available and is part of it. We're not this, an effective VCISO is not one who's just, hey, call me when you need me. It's somebody who's actually leaning in a lot more on what's needed and being able to then help, again, shepherd along the strategic roadmap. And ideally, clients that don't want to hide you behind them as this like resource, but somebody who's actually kind of putting them forward into the organization saying, look, these people are experts at what they're doing. Like this VCISO is the one who knows that's why they're here. Let's integrate with them. Let's engage them. Let's talk to them. Let's hear what they have to say. Right. And not just, some consultant in the background that the CIO taps kind of when they need. Right. Because if you're not leaning in, you're not going to be effective. And I think that goes to, if you're a full-time CISO or a virtual CISO or fractional CISO, whatever you want to call it. I think that type of mentality is what's needed for the role, regardless, consultant or not.
What about influencing budgets, for example? Do you find that there's difficulty there, that you're not exactly from within the company and not necessarily always, in front of the board and asking for money for a certain, solution or certain, fill certain gaps? Do you find there's a challenge there for a VCISO to go out and ask for money for specific projects?
Yes, but I think the good piece is that you're able to bring in a lot of outside understanding and what costs are and shouldn't be, and then also being able to bring in a lot of experience on what things are going to cost and how to maybe structure them that maybe somebody internal to the organization doesn't have visibility to. Because again, I'm taking the experience from a portfolio of clients, right? Not just working inside of one company and having eyeballs on that. So, I mean, as far as budgeting goes, it's just a matter of being part of that conversation. Like, what are the goals for the organization? Like, here's our roadmap. What's this going to cost? Okay. What's the priority of what we should be going after first, second, third? Now let me go figure out what the best costs are. A really great CISO or VCISO is going to be one that's independent in their view on what you use, and not someone who's just saying, oh, here's and this is where we kind of differentiate ourselves from VARs. Right? VARs are salespeople selling you what's in their portfolio. And a VCISO should be one who's independent, doesn't care, doesn't have an allegiance to any product, technology, or service, is there on the client side giving them advice, pointing out what the good technologies and services are, and bringing those ones forward. So having that type of independence allows you to better position what may or may not be needed inside of the budget. But it's still, budgeting discussion, ultimately the clients can be able to dictate it. I can still only make recommendations on what they need to, but having that level of independence and transparency makes it a lot easier to have that conversation with them, because then they're not looking at it like, oh, well, you're just telling me to buy this because you're going to make X amount of dollars or whatever commission on it. It's like, no, independent advisor versus salesperson and VAR. Like, that's the way to look at it. And that's I think a huge thing for successful CISOs or VCISOs to start really embracing and doing. And that's, I think, this piece that's separating those people who have done the role as a CISO going into the role versus VARs who are just providing security consulting as a service. And then you also should be buying from their portfolio things that they make available. That's that was one of the reasons you asked kind of about the platform. One of the reasons that we wanted to start doing this was, if you look, having been a buyer of security services, I knew that my VAR was going to come to me, and if they were making 30 points on CrowdStrike and 20 points on Carbon Black, guess which one they were going to tell me I should buy. That's not how you should procure solutions. You should procure solutions based on what they do for your gaps, then financially what you can afford and what you can do. It shouldn't be positioned based on the commission that your salesperson is going to make. That commissions should not be dictating security strategy. Security strategy should be dictating what we want to go do and then go find the solutions. It's not the other way around. And by working with, and a lot of small businesses, are just embracing working with a VAR because that's who's in front of them and that's who's getting FaceTime. So that's what they're getting sold. I got a lot of clients I've gone into and I've been like, how did you guys get into this? You're using 25% of this product, 50% of that product, and you're thinking about buying this thing over here. And if based on our assessment, you're not addressing your number one vulnerability. How did you get to this? They're like, oh, well, working with the VAR and the sales guy. It's like, you're letting sales dictate your security strategy. Good luck.
So, and you're right. I think that the industry is primed to be disrupted in this particular way. So, how does your platform help? You said you're building a SaaS platform, which is,
Yep.
So it's also, quite a interesting concept, since you're kind of, you're a franchise services kind of provider, and then you're moving into becoming kind of almost a software vendor and a SaaS platform. Maybe you can tell me a bit about the platform and what, where you are with it and how you intend to launch it.
Yeah, we're actually really close. We plan to launch by the end of this month. It's called Real CISO. What we figured out was we were going in and doing all these assessments on clients to start, because it's the first thing a CISO does when they get to an organization. What do you look like? And then where do you want to be? Everything in between is your gap analysis and becomes your roadmap. It's pretty straightforward. Like, this is straight out of NIST CSF, like the opening pages. This is not rocket science. But I found out that I was asking the same questions over and over and over again because I want to know the same things about how to assess somebody. And then I looked at kind of what other people were doing around assessment, and it's like incredibly manually intensive. Like, a regular engagement was for an assessment for an organization was, all these consultants are going to come in. I'm going to dedicate my team, and then I'm going to pay you to be here. I'm basically paying for 2 people or whatever to be on site to now assess me and figure this out. It's like, well, what if we just kind of made it really simple and just did questionnaire based, ask the right questions of your staff, reduce the cost completely, make it on your time, and then take all of those questions, map them to industry standards, and then produce what you look like. And so that's what we did. And that's basically what we've accomplished is we ask a series of questions based on recognized standards like the CIS top 20 and NIST, and then map and then give you a view of what you look like against those. And then through that, be able to give you a prioritized risk ranking and roadmap of what do you need to go do first, second, and third. The services piece and why we kind of broke it out is, so that's the product. The next component is, okay, if you want support and ongoing services and you feel like this is a little bit beyond do it yourself, that's where SideChannel is. And now you can engage a CISO, and now you can spin up those services and we can get those guys going. It's basically, like, have you ever done TurboTax, right? It's anybody in the US can go do their taxes for free by themselves with all the forms that the IRS makes available. But that's kind of hard for some folks. So you pay a little bit of money to TurboTax and they'll walk you through all of it. Some people want a little bit more level of oversight, and they'll pay for the CPA inside of TurboTax to be available should you get audited or if you want that ongoing engagement. Americans and just buyers as a whole have kind of moved to thinking and wanting this type of optionality. And that's basically what we did with an assessment to security and then road mapping. So it's the same kind of concept. Yeah.
So this is great. So basically you're creating a TurboTax, for security essentially.
Yep.
And do you have any roadmap to, and I know it's kind of oxymoron because you call it a real CISO, but maybe turn it into a machine learning AI type of, where you can scale it up to thousands organization where after you create this input, the machine will maybe map it to a NIST best practices and then we'll spit out recommendation of what you should do.
So it's funny, but we're not tackling, we don't have to do any of this through ML or AI at all. This is everything we're doing is actually basic and complex logic. That's really all that's needed. Because if you look at standards as they're set, one control in one framework could be just name something else in another framework. And that's really it. Or one control could be 2 controls in another framework. So using just basic and complex logic, we were able to create all of this. And we actually have something that can scale to tens and hundreds of thousands of people based on the assessment criteria that we're establishing. The heavy work is doing the mappings and the prioritization. But again, that's what a CISO does. So we basically took our thinking on how to do this and rolled it into that. So one day maybe ML and AI, but we're simple guys when it comes to like solving problems. So we figured we could do it with if-then statements and basic and some other complex logic. It's actually not it doesn't require ML. Like, and there's no free form text to have to worry about either. It's all, because in security, there kind of are right answers. So there's ways to ask questions to then say and determine if you're not doing the right thing. So by taking that approach, you make it really easy to then be able to say, well, if you're not doing this, this is what you should be doing, and then in this order.
You know, Brian, I love your approach for, you know, as I mentioned, you know, just basically if then statement. You know, I heard that there is no such thing as machine learning AI. I heard there's a new expression now, you know, AI, you know, artificial intelligence,
Right.
where it was really nothing actually going on behind the scenes. You know, it's really interesting. So, you know, before we jump into the kind of the question here, I'm assuming, and again, just from you know where the industry is going, you know, that the COVID-19 has done, you know, tremendously well for you, you know, in your business, due to the fact that the, you know, companies now are trying to they're facing increasing